Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfisherinsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at flyfisherinsiderpodcast. Now let's begin. Today's guest is Chris Ritter, the owner of North Tackle. Chris is a longtime fly fisher whose home waters are in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Chris started North Tackle, which focuses on hand-built wooden fly fishing nets at extremely affordable prices. Chris takes extreme pride in his craft of net building to ensure you can confidently land that fish of a lifetime when using a Northkill net. Chris's passions of quality control for Northkill nets are quickly becoming the new industry standard in the wooden handcrafted nets. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Tell us a little something about yourself that we don't know.
Something about myself that you don't know? Well, probably most of your listeners aren't familiar with Northkill Tackle at all. But me personally, I am an automotive reference librarian. I restore cars, tinker around with old airplanes, and my real passion right now is making landing nets.
Nice. And if I'm not mistaken, you actually own a plane. Is that right?
Yeah, I own a 1946 Cessna 140. It was a little two-seat trainer airplane after World War II. A lot of the American aircraft companies realized that troops could use their GI Bill to fund and finance flight education. So these companies scrambled to put together these two-seat trainers, and Cessna was one of them. So it's a pretty cool plane. It's got a lot of character. I used to fly it a lot more, but hobbies and life get in the way of that.
Well, I know every fly fisher out there is just thinking, Chris, you're going to some pretty awesome places that no one can get to.
I wish I could tell you that was the case, but I've never actually used the airplane to go to a destination.
Oh,
add that to the list of things to do.
It's on the bucket list. Tell us a bit about your business and how you got started.
Okay. So Northkill Tackle, we specialize in landing nets made out of wood. We also do some custom fly rods and sell vintage tackle as well. How I got into the landing nets was really kind of simple. Another hobby that I have is just general woodworking. And I've been doing woodworking since the early 2000s. And I thought the perfect combo would be to combine my passion for fishing with my passion for woodworking. Most of the woodworking that I had done would be on a larger scale, furniture, large beds, sofa tables, that kind of stuff. You know, those big projects can be really daunting, a lot of time consuming projects there. So I thought, why don't I scale it down a little bit rather than going the whole fly tying desk? And I decided to make myself a landing net about 2 years ago. Thing was really crude, but it really sort of lit a fire. And just this past year, we've started to become an official company, started selling to the public. After I could also say that something that inspired me was the fact that, you know, I'd go into fly shops and I'd just see how expensive equipment is and how expensive, whether it's a carbon fiber landing net or, like I mentioned, a fly tying desk or even just a regular old polo shirt. I'd look at this stuff and think it was just so expensive and who can afford this stuff? You know, it's one thing for me to be able to afford one piece, but to, have a full outfit is just, it's tough for the average man to do who's got a family and hobbies and other obligations. So, I'd look at these landing nets and think I could do that. Now that's, as I would find out, a pretty naive approach. But sometimes that's the best way to jump into things. So I assumed that I wasn't the only person that felt this way about the high prices. So I wanted to make a very high quality wood landing net for the common man that was affordable. So what I really focus on is affordability, quality, and good customer service as well.
Chris, you know what? That's kind of like your aha moment when you sit there and you're like, you know what? I can do this. You're looking at it and you can do it. You know you can do it. And to have that background with the carpentry and the woodworking into it. Now, how does that translate into, building a desk is one thing, into building a fine handcrafted net like you guys are producing over at Northkill? Like, how does that come over and what are you learning with that?
Every project starts the same. You get some ideas on paper, you figure out what materials are going to cost, you figure out what tools you're going to need, you just jump into the project. First couple nets that I made were just copies of existing cheap nets that I had laying around. Once I got a feel for the whole process, then I started to tinker things, make things more ergonomic, make things more comfortable, we have what we have today.
As a new business, I know you guys are quite new, but what are some early challenges? You must have challenges. I mean, every business has challenges, but you've probably had some challenges or even failures earlier on in your business while getting it up and going. Can you elaborate on that?
It definitely took a while for me to sort out the whole steam bending process. I had never really done any steam bending leading up to this whole venture.
Super important net building, I doubt. I doubt it.
Yeah, if you want a landing net made out of wood, you're going to have to learn how to bend wood, and you're going to try to do that without singeing too much of your skin off.
Ooh.
I was fortunate in that I never got too many burns. Quite often, I would definitely underestimate just how hot steam is, and it's very hot very quickly. So you learn to respect steam. I also had to figure out the way I did my actual glue up process. In the beginning, I used to use C clamps and sliding clamps. I know a lot of guys still do that with the nets that they make, but for me, I found it a much better product by using, it's actually inner tubes for cars. Just chop those up into long strips, and then I wrap those around the mold. And I think that it gives a better distribution of tension so that there's no gaps. Glue lines, if they're there, they're absolutely minuscule, and you wouldn't know unless you were really looking for it.
Can you actually walk us through, for those that don't know, like walk us through your operating production? Like, for instance, like how many man hours go into your product and where you source the materials from, and if you're hands-on in the start to finish of every aspect of where you're getting your raw materials from?
Yeah, I'm definitely hands-on in every step. I'm the owner, but I'm also the chief cook, bottle washer, you name it, the guy that sweeps the floor. It's me, and it's only me. So the first thing I do is I figure out what I want the net to look like. Like I mentioned earlier, make a little diagram. And then the first piece that I make would be the blank for the handle. So that would be the center piece of wood, the main center portion of the handle itself. I cut that out rough, make sure the sides are nice and smooth. And then I cut strip of hardwood. Right now, I use a lot of walnut and I use a lot of ash. Both of those hardwoods bend really easy.
Is that the main benefit of using those hardwoods in your product?
It's the main benefit. They're available.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest benefit. You can steam just about any hardwood with success, especially the way that I do it. I cut strips into 1/8 inch strips. And then they're probably about 6 feet long. And what I do after I cut my strips is I'll put 3 of them in the steam chamber, and I heat those up for about 15 minutes. It's close to boiling point, so it's a little over 200 degrees. You're not going to get quite 212, but it's as hot as the steam can get. I pull it out of the steam chamber, and then I put those onto the mold, and I wrap it around. And then I just take one of my inner tube clamps, and right down at the bottom where the handle would be, I just wrap it around there. So what I do, that whole thing is just getting your preliminary steam bend. There's no handle at this point. It's just kind of giving shape to what's going to be the hoop. I let that dry fully for a day, at which point I can then do the whole glue up process. And I have a special clamp. It's actuated by my foot. And I just put the strips onto the mold, and then I apply my glue and just simply start wrapping around the mold. When I get to the handle area, I simply continue the wrap around the handle, make sure there's no gaps. I have to make sure everything's perfectly lined up, or else you're going to have a net that looks a little bit wonky. So everything looks symmetrical. That's the basics of how the start of a net begins. From there, what comes out of that mold is pretty darn ugly. You'll have some rough edges. You'll definitely have a whole lot of glue that had squeezed out during the clamping process. So I take the whole raw net and then I feed it through a drum sander. There's another thing that I learned from the beginning. Initially, I was using a planer.
Okay.
And I switched to the drum sander because the drum sander is A, the right tool for the job. B, I quickly learned because I chipped a portion of the blade in my planer off. So just imagine razor sharp metal flying through the shop.
Yeah, no one wants that.
No, it was a quick lesson that could have ended very badly. Fortunately, I got away easy on that, got the proper tool, which is the drum sander. From there, I take that sanded, I can use the drum sander and sand it down to, usually the hand nets are about 3/4 of an inch thick. Once that's all smooth, then it's time for me to drill where I'm going to put the holes in for the landing net bag. Also, I route a little channel where the string that holds the landing net back to the frame.
And you're using a rubber basket, right?
I use rubber landing net bags that have really small holes. The holes range in size from about 1/2 inch up to 5/8.
And what benefits do those provide?
Well, there's a lot of net designs or net bag designs that have larger holes. So if you're fishing and catch a small fish, Well, then, the fish slides through the bottom of the bag, and then your line's going through the bag, and it just creates a big hassle. Not only is it a headache for you to get your line and everything out of the net, but naturally it puts more strain on the fish.
Yeah.
So I like the small holes, and they seem to be doing a good job.
Chris, I'm gonna shift it right now. What advice would you have for anyone after you've just described on how to build a net? What advice would you have for someone that's thinking about starting out building a net, or possibly thinking about starting out building a net business like yourself?
Well, I would say first and foremost, you got to keep trying, and you gotta love the product that you're building. It's funny to say that I love landing nets, but I just think that they're beautiful works of art. And if I didn't, but every time I hit a bump in the road, if I didn't like a landing net, I obviously wouldn't stick with it. So find a way that you can stay passionate about it. If at all possible, find a mentor.
You know what, Chris? I'm gonna just chime in for a sec to the listeners, to the Fly Insiders. Finding a mentor and how important that is, especially in our industry. There's so many people and so many guides, so many guys that are in the industry within certain areas and niches, and to find and seek those people out and really rely on them. Yeah, it takes a while and it's a bit difficult to always get through to them. But finding a mentor, Chris, you've nailed it right there. It takes years off your life and just speeds things right up, off your growing pains. It is so important. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't tell your listeners to expect people to just open up their bag of tricks immediately. It takes a while to build that relationship. It's flattering when somebody takes an interest in things that you do. So it's only human nature that if you ask questions in an appropriate way, they're going to want to help you out.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's putting in the time and making sure that you do get that. You know what? I do want to shift also to what is going on. What's new for Northkill? We know about your past. Let's talk about your future. Tell us what's new for you guys.
First, it's important to note that we will make absolutely any shape or size of net that you can dream of. And we can also use virtually any wood. So that wood could be something that's sentimental to you. It could be your grandparents' mantle. It could be something as simple as a tree that fell over in your front yard. We can make a handle blank out of that. Just add value to what that net means to you. And while we can do that custom work, right now we're focusing on 3 basic net shapes and sizes. And our flagship net is our Scout net. And that's what most people would consider simply a traditional landing net. It has an 8-inch handle and a 16 by 8.5-inch hoop. The net weighs just 13 ounces. Right now we're using walnut, ash, sycamore, and bird's eye maple for those. The net bag, as we mentioned, is rubber. The Scout nets sell for between $85 and $95, depending on the wood that you choose. If you like the Scout net, we have something that has a little bit longer handle. It's basically the Scout net with a 19-inch handle. It's called our guide net, and it's a fantastic net for kayaking. As the name implies, if you're a guide or just fishing with somebody else, it's just the perfect net to just reach over and help a partner out. Those nets we're using hard maple, ash, and walnut, and that sells for $105. We don't want to alienate anybody, so our largest net is our boat or steelhead net. This one is 49 inches in overall length, and it has a 20 by 17-inch hoop. For that, we use a Promar net, and it's 14 inches deep. And then a kind of cool feature that we use with that, some of our field testers gave us ideas. They said that it was a little too slippery when it got wet, so we added a soft wind grip, and that not only provides good grip, but it provides a splash of color as well. And that one sells for $125. So you asked about, I think he asked about anything new. So outside of those 3, we're actually developing a very small net, and it's designed for small native trout. That net's going to, that net is going to aid in the quick release of those tiny little fish. But, and this is kind of what's cool, you can't reinvent the wheel, and it's sort of hard to reinvent the landing net, but we're developing and testing a very special tool that's going to be built into the landing net frame. It's not a measuring tape, but it's something that you would definitely use on every trip out. Obviously, I can't get into all the details right now. So
you're killing us, Chris.
Check my website in the late spring, but once you see it, it'll be like, oh yeah, why hasn't that been done before? And
I love it. You're just killing us. Even I'm curious.
I could tell you off air as long as you signed a confidentiality agreement.
Of course. We are here. So
yeah,
that's too funny. I love anything top secret. It just it adds to it.
Yeah, a lot of intrigue in the whole landing net world, huh?
Well, you know what? It's a fascinating business, and it's a handcrafted. It's your passion, and you know what? Fill us in. Where's the demand? Where's the user? You've identified your product. Who's the user that uses your product?
We have a few field testers out there. Those range from traditional fly fishermen for trout to guys that are looking for some bigger bigger species like pike and large bass as well. What we've one I guess you could kind of turn it back to one of the mistakes I made is I was really naive in how I was going to find my customers. I did definitely do a business plan, but I thought it would be as simple as throw a few cool pictures up on Instagram and I would just be completely overwhelmed with customers. And
If only it was that easy, Chris. If only it was that easy.
yeah, that was definitely not the case. So
Hmm.
obviously, what it takes is you have to be in front of a person. You have to, give the 10-second spiel. But even better than the little chat or sales pitch that I can give is showing somebody my net in person, and they will compare that instantly to what they have in their gear bag, what they've seen at one of the big box stores or Walmart, and instantly know that North Kill nets are definitely a cut above. But so where are my customers right now? Most of them are in the Northeast US. I have one boat net in work in development that's going to be sent down to Florida, and then we actually have a potential customer out your way in Surrey, British Columbia, that they're interested in one of our scout nets. So hopefully we can connect them. We're going to definitely be hitting the local fishing shows around here so that we can spread the word and spread the product.
Which leads me into my next question of where you guys are always constantly pushing the company and which direction you're pushing the bar to raise the bar for the company and to get yourself out there on a better playing field. Like, what is your strategy as a new company and a new company within this beautiful industry, the fly fishing industry? I know many of us are thinking that.
Yeah, we're definitely always looking to improve our products because you're only I don't know what the exact saying, but it's basically you're only as good as yesterday. I'm very aware that our nets are affordable and most people can afford them, but they can just as easily go to Walmart and buy a net for $10. Now that net isn't going to last very long, but for a trip or two, it's probably going to do the job just fine for them. So what I have to do is I have to instill a sense of pride and customer service to all my customers. My customers will definitely know that I make every net to strict standards, and not every net gets through my quality control. There's been a few nets that I've simply chucked to the side and I do future testing on them. I took a couple nets and slammed them into the ground a few times to see how long it took to break, which was kind of fun.
I bet.
Naturally, I want all my customers to see a beautiful product,
Yeah.
fantastic fit and finish, and I want them to be proud every time they look at their net and show even more pride when they show it off to a buddy.
I think you just answered the question that everyone was thinking, why buy a custom net or why buy a North Kill net? And you couldn't have summed it up any better. Like, it's exactly why. A net that you're proud of, a net that's been tested, a net that's been hand built, a net that comes with a guarantee, and a net that's going to be feasible and work, plus has a secret contraption that we don't know about yet. So no, I agree. That was the elephant in the room. Why buy that? And I couldn't agree more. I mean, you summed it up very well. Looking at the way things are going, and how are you guys incorporating the nets into your social side of the business?
Well, they take great pictures, that's for sure. We socially we show off what we're doing on the
Hmm.
water. Quite often you'll see a net in the background. Quite often you won't see anything at all because we're not going to just shamelessly plug our nets constantly. We're about the fishing lifestyle as well. So we practice what we preach, but definitely we're here to sell our product and make sure it's seen out on Instagram and our Facebook page.
Awesome. With that being said, can you tell the audience the various platforms that you guys are currently where your business brand is reaching? Like, I know where you're in Pennsylvania. Where else are you reaching in the social world?
Sure. So we currently sell through our website. That's northkilltackle.com. We have a very small presence on eBay. And then, as I mentioned, we do attend several fishing shows in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. I'm currently in talks with some fly shops throughout Pennsylvania, and we expect to have a physical presence in those shops probably within just a couple months. Like I said, most of our current customers are here in the Northeast, but we're very eager to get them much further out.
Of course, of course. And you do wholesale orders and whatnot as well, to my understanding.
Yeah, we definitely offer a wholesale program. If there are any dealers who are interested in carrying our line, just reach out to me by email. It's northkilltackle@gmail.com, and we can give everybody all the good details.
I also wanted to ask you, as a business owner within the industry, is there any trends or anything that you're finding that kind of gets you a little upset within this industry? I mean, I know it's a little early for you, but is there anything that you have on your mind?
Yeah, like you said, it is pretty early. I've only been officially in business for a year, so I'm not I'm not that jaded yet to have any kind of pet peeves within the industry. But I would definitely say that, when I look back to when I started fly fishing back in I think 2003 was the first time that I picked up a fly rod. I could definitely say that intimidation was a big thing for me. The first couple times I went into a fly shop, I just didn't feel at home. I felt like it was this exclusive club that you
Yeah.
somehow had to figure out the password to gain access to. If there was any way that, there was any kind of program out there, or just people took it upon themselves to one on one kind of put their arm around somebody and almost become a mentor, whether
Hmm.
it's picking out the right rod, picking out the right fly, or just go take somebody onto the water. I think just kind of eliminating that learning curve and that intimidation factor will do wonders, not only for you as a person, but, we all have to think about the long term picture of this hobby, and that's going to be a big part of it.
Absolutely. It's funny. I speak with a lot of people on the show, and that mentorship and finding a mentor early in those early days is just so important. It's just a common trend that comes up, and I 100% relate to you. I remember walking into a fly shop, and I would buy anything that the guy told me just to get in and get out. And I was on the water, and I had a mess of a time for the first few months. But I can tell you, it changes in time, but you're absolutely right. We are a tribe, and we do want to see the sport grow. Helping those new people come along and welcoming them and embracing them is definitely a challenge that is a common thread within this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that I officially said it. I think I've implied it, but if anybody's interested in learning what I've done so far with the landing nets, feel free to reach out and I can give you tips and suggestions and advice.
Awesome. You know what? I think people will love that. I know that we'll put up your information at the end of the show. And then, hey guys, if you any Fly Fishing Insider podcast listeners out there that have questions or want to speak to Chris about that, definitely reach out to him. There's someone that's willing to take the time and answer some questions you might have. So, hey Chris, what's next for the company? What are your future goals?
Future goals, world domination, and for every fisherman to have a North Kill net in their pile of gear.
I love it.
Probably not attainable right now. So in the near future, I'm just going to keep giving my undivided attention to each customer. And seriously, connecting people with a beautiful handmade tool is really a rush. And I think that my nets will absolutely last generations. So this is something, if you buy it today, you'll be giving it to your grandkids, and more than likely they'll be giving it to their grandkids. So that's just my goal, is just make a good, affordable, quality product that's going to be here for years and years to come.
Guess what, guys? We're at that point here. We're at the 10 frequently asked questions from our listeners from the Fly Fishing Insider podcast. Chris, are you ready? I'm going to ask you some questions from our listeners. They want to know, how many days a year do you fish?
Not as much as I'd like to. 50 right now, but with a mix of full-time job, side job, kids, and other hobbies. 50 is where I'm
Hey
at.
man, that's once a week as far as I'm concerned, right? What's your what's your best fishing trip been so far?
Back in the early 2000s, I took a trip to Bishop, California, and I got to fish the Eastern Sierras. It was definitely my first time in the mountains, and it was really a mind-blowing experience.
Hey, besides the North Kill net, what's your favorite fly gear setup?
Right now, I'm on a tightline nymphing kick. So I've been using an Orvis Clearwater 10-foot rod. It's a 4-weight. And I have a simple Lamson liquid reel. I think it's Scientific Angler's competition nymph line.
If you had just one fly in your fly box, what would it be?
It would be Black Death, which was introduced by George Daniel a few years ago. It's a stonefly pattern, has a black squirrel body with a red rib, and then they use a black CDC collar. And every time I used it this past season, I caught fish with it.
Chris, I saw it on your website there.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, I saw it there. It looks like a killer fly. You're definitely gonna have to pick one up. If you could fish with anyone, who would it be, Chris?
That would be George Daniel. I actually did get to fish with him just a couple months ago. I had a half-day session with him, and I learned more in 4 hours than I did in probably 10 months of reading and researching his books and his theories. Yeah, it costs money to hire a guide like that, but it was definitely worth the investment.
When did you start fishing?
I started fishing in college. So that would have been around 1998. And for the first 5 years, I was a typical power bait, and mealworms and a 6-pack of beer
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
guy. And then I sort of evolved into a fly fisherman, like I said, around 2003.
What's your favorite water to fish, Chris?
My favorite kind of water to fish is just small freshwater streams.
Biggest fish on a fly rod?
I wouldn't say it's anything ridiculous. This past season, I caught a 21-inch smallmouth. I think it weighed 4.5 pounds. So definitely a respectable fish, but nothing that would set any world records.
That's probably a good fight on there, eh? Or
Yeah.
I saw that.
Oh,
Bet you
yeah.
that gave you a run for your money. Dream destination, dream trip, bucket list.
I'd be going back to the Sierras, and I would want to do a backpacking trip in the Golden Trout Wilderness.
Before we let you go here, do you have any specials or any products or anything like that for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely have sales from time to time, so please follow me on Instagram. The handle's North Kill Tackle. You'll definitely see the latest results and the latest sales there. But just for your listeners, we would like to offer a 15% discount on your entire order. Just use the coupon code Fly Fishing Insider, and there is no space between those words, Fly Fishing Insider, at checkout, and you get 15% off.
Awesome. I love it. We'll make sure that we put those in the show notes as well, all that information. And Chris, before I let you go, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find my website at northkilltackle.com. You can find me on Instagram, northkilltackle, or hashtag northkilltackle. And my email address is northkilltackle@gmail.com.
All right. I want to thank my guest today, Chris Ritter of North Kill Tackle. Thanks for being on the show, Chris.
Again, thank you for having me. I really can't thank you enough.